See the size of those cookies? Is that insane or what? Right on. Well, if you keep coming to seminars like that, that's what your real estate portfolio will look like. A massive big cookie. All right, so let's get... We're getting late in the afternoon, right? I'm really pressing here for what we're trying to achieve here. So now, we got a couple more speakers. Thank you. We have a couple more speakers. We have a board of people coming up to chat, and then we have our special guest at 4:30 or so. So let's push through the rest of the afternoon. And I know that some of us are a little bit tired and stuff, not used to spending a whole Saturday in a seminar room, but things are really good. Are you guys happy? Are you having a good time? Yeah? Yeah? Do you feel that there's some value here? Yes? Excellent. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and make sure you take some notes, because this is very important. We're in the real estate world here, and as we're moving towards the end, the information is getting more specific to what you're doing. So Kayla Andrade is a wife, a mother, a landlord, and now an advocate. She prefers actions with tangible results rather than sitting back and ignoring the issues. Ms. Andrade has a long record of successful guiding local and provincial landlords through the many issues and policies, and where many have taken notice of her motivation and skills in advocacy. This strong commitment and dedication is how Ontario Landlords Watch was born, finally providing an avenue where landlords could share their experiences and struggles. Over the years, this grassroots advocacy organization has built a solid foundation of supporters through their supportive services involving the rental housing market, the residential tenancies. This strong team has evolved to fight not only for the rights of landlords, but also for the plight of good tenants and the heavily burdened taxpayer. They seize every opportunity to meet with elected officials, taxpayers, landlords, and tenants to discuss solutions to the housing crisis. Kayla began her endeavors at the young age of 18, where she purchased her first rental property. Since that time, she has become a seasoned landlord and expanded her rentals to include a 5-plex, 6-plex, 2 triplexes, and a single-family home. 18 doors in total. Wow. Her dream is to empower a team of private sector housing advocates in each city to work together to provide fair and balanced rules and regulations that benefit all members. Put your hands together for Kayla Andrade.
Okay, how does this little thing work?
Nice and simple.
Just keep pushing the green one?
Yep.
Okay, am I on? I'm okay. Got my water. It's not Red Bull. Should have got the Red Bull after seeing everybody here right now. This is my first time working with some slides. Normally I talk with passion and a few little notes and I really go off, but I got 30 minutes, so I'm going to stop talking and get to the point. Oh, see, look. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Andrade. I am, like AJ said, I'm a landlord. I've been a landlord for 17 years. I had been an advocate for the last 10. I have a busload of children upstairs right now, and I still have the baby brain because I just had a baby 4 months ago. But we have an opportunity right now for landlords to advocate throughout Ontario, and now is the time, and that's why I'm here today to talk to you guys about how you can get involved and to let you know what's actually happening. So I started advocating for landlords in 2010 when the City of Cambridge started making landlords responsible for their tenants' delinquent utility bill. Through that time frame, I didn't know any landlords. I just had a 5-plex underneath my belt at the time, didn't know there was an RTA, and I'm like, we need more landlords to fight this water billing policy because it's spreading like a wildfire right across Ontario. So I got on Kijiji, I called these landlords up. Hi, I'm calling about your semi. I'm not calling to rent it. I just want to let you know that if you do have a tenant, if they don't pay their water bill, it's going to go to your property taxes with a $50 fee. You need to get down and you need to fight this policy. And that's when we got a protest right on the doorsteps of City Hall. And when I got the protest ready to go through all the landlords, we got a notification from the City of Cambridge telling us that we cannot have our protest at City Hall. So I called the Cambridge Times and told them the city's going to stop me from having my protest. They contacted the city called me back and said, you can have your protest. You could probably hide my little pitchfork there, but and that's when we were born. That's how we became a strong, united voice for landlords, by pulling us together in just a small group like this. Now in Ontario Landlords Watch, we're a closed Facebook group, which we meet once a year in Cambridge for our annual conference. There's about 4,000 members in our group, and they range from property managers, landlords, paralegals, and real estate agents. Anyone that is involved in this rental industry and who actually has skin in the game. We talk about issues with the Landlord and Tenant Board, the Residential and Tenancy Act, municipal policies, regional housing programs, government housing and development. And we want to know the issues and we want to know the solutions. And the way to do that was through our Facebook group. The reason why we do this is because we do have a housing crisis in Ontario. And even though we're landlords, and even though that we want to be able to make money and we want to run a really good business, we also have to take into consideration that you're also a taxpayer who is paying very heavily to deal with the housing crisis in Ontario. With just 235,000 Canadians experiencing homelessness each year, with 35,000 Canadians experiencing homelessness on any given night. And there's a lot of hidden homelessness, which couch surfing. And what's really sad to see now that our seniors have become that actual face of our homeless population. And that's why us as investors, we can be the solution in order to address this issue. But we have our government, we have our elected officials, billions of dollars is being wasted. Not even wasted, it's not sustainable. We have ourselves that we're addressing the housing crisis, but it's not going anywhere. This is where is it going? Us as taxpayers are paying to fund social housing, to build it, to manage it, for the maintenance, the utilities, the rent subsidy, the marketing material, and fees. We have to offset fees from developers in order to help get more supply onto our market. We have shelters. The amount of money that's being spent on shelters, it actually costs in the region of Waterloo $70 to $90 per day just to keep someone in the housing system, not including what our emergency shelters, which is $400,000 for 70 beds for the winter season. Then we also have our overflow, our motels. We know what motel costs is all about, so when there's an overflow, these people are going in there. We also have the regional incentives. So in the region of Waterloo, they're trying to get private investors to work with them. And they're saying, hey, I'm going to give you $25,000 to create a secondary suite. And in order to take this forgivable loan, you are not going to be raising it to this amount of money for these two people, for this rental unit to not succeed a certain rate. Meanwhile, we're like, we'd rather take money from a loan shark than take the $25,000, but it's still money that's being wasted. And then we have the cost to operate the Landlord and Tenant Board, and the duplicates of services, and of course our rent banks. So anytime that we have a tenant that's in the arrears, our rent banks, the taxpayers are paying them out. The current system is unsustainable. The way that we see now, we have rental units that are building, managing, maintaining, and the tenants are paying between $115 in the Waterloo region for an all-inclusive unit, with utilities included. So let's give an example, Waterloo region. This is something that just came out newly. 48 units. The land was gifted to the developer for them to build. It's going to cost $12.7 million. That's federal, provincial, municipal funding. Then they are crowdfunding for $5 million more. And again, it's going to follow that same unsustainable system of managing, maintaining, subsidizing the maintenance and everything. And we're looking at $264,000 per unit. Another development in Cambridge with the developers of $7.1 million, and that only gave us 34. Now, what if we actually had the elected officials give private homeowners $70,000? $70,000 could actually be, that's a really nice two-bedroom for $70,000. We were being very generous on knowing that we'd probably get away with $50,000. We could create 181 units. and they don't have to manage it, they don't have to maintain it, and all they should be doing is being able to subsidize it for the people who can't afford to pay it. But an overall is that working with private landlords is better than the government trying to be landlords themselves. If you talk to anyone that's in Toronto, they will tell you who is the biggest slumlord. They will talk to you about government housing because they're very much they're trying so hard. And with John Tory just came out and said, we got billions of dollars to repair social housing, not to build it, to repair it. So are we really facing an affordable housing crisis, or is it a supply and demand? We believe that Ontario landlords, the small landlords, even developers, they have their portion in the business, but we believe that our small landlords could be a portion of getting the solution that we need. But why are the landlords selling their rental units? Why are they taking duplexes and turning them into single-family homes to offset and get rid of them quicker? Why are we looking at long-term rentals and getting them into short-term rentals as a way to escape the RTA? Why are landlords going from long-term residential into commercial? What are the major factors currently discouraging private investors? We asked our members. It's the Residential Tenancy Act. It's geared in towards protecting the tenants, not protecting the landlords. The Landlord and Tenant Board is another unsustainable system, and it's falling apart piece by piece, day by day, and it's getting worse, and that's why I'm here today to talk to you. We have municipal policies such as water billing, the landlord licensing, different type of zoning populations. There's so many issues that the municipalities can do to really try to get more supply, but they're putting landlords in handcuffs and preventing us from wanting to get into it. And we talked about a little bit with Christian regarding OW and ODSP. We have government programs that are there to help people in desperate need, and not everybody is able to go out and work, so we need to help this population. But sadly, the landlord population and the community has discriminated against people because the payment that you get from OW and ODSP, it can go right back to the tenants. They can stop that check from coming to you, and then we start our tenants on a downward spiral of end up having the non-payment of rent situation happening, and they have wages that are ungarnishable. And then the social housing factor is that the way that the social housing is that you can own $1 million worth of assets and still qualify for affordable housing. And there's no incentives for anyone to move out of social housing, so we're going to always have a constant need for creating more social housing on the back of the taxpayers. Now, the Landlord and Tenant Board issues, like Christian mentioned, 90% of the applications are being brought to the Landlord and Tenant Board. I'm not going to go through all of these issues. I'm sure if you're a landlord in this industry, you're going to know what kind of issues. But the most one that we're hearing about now is the long wait times for non-payment of rent. We have our long wait times for judgments. I had to wait 56 days for a piece of paper in the mail before I had to go and apply for the sheriff. I've been a landlord for 15 years, and I only had to go to the Landlord and Tenant Board once, and it took me 7 months to evict a tenant, not including the damages that was caused into this unit. So we have free legal aid for tenants. Nothing for landlords. It's all for the tenants, and again, that's taxpayer money being spent at the Landlord and Tenant Board process. We have different ways of, once you get your eviction, we have 11-day standard order. So if you have your order and you're all happy and yay, they're going to be kicked out, well, now you have to wait 11 days before you can apply for the sheriff. So if you want to take a picture of there, plus I actually condensed this from 3 slides of issues down to 1. So you can tell you what kind of issues we got going on here. The Landlord and Tenant Board solutions, with over 80,000 applications being received, 58,423 of them are non-payment of rent, and we pay our adjudicators $110,000 salary to deal with non-payment of rent. Wouldn't it be better just to take that $110,000 salary and give it to the people in order to keep them in their rent, to keep them in their house? Just a suggestion. So removing the non-payment of rent is what's going to really speed up the Landlord and Board process, but in a way, there also got to be some government support regarding the subsidy, rent banks, things like that they're already existing. One of our solutions regarding the wait times for our judgments and how we have to wait for our hearing date. They have to go back to their office. They have 30 days to get you that judgment. And within that time frame, you actually have to sit there and wait, no rent, no damages. We need to have someone at the Landlord and Tenant Board giving you that judgment right there and then. That way, if you can clear it from any errors, which errors have been happening on these judgments, you can look at the, from the adjudicator looking at it, the paralegal, the landlord, the tenant, everyone's good. Here's your piece of paper. Get rid of this 11-day standard order. We also need to have our telephone hearings. One thing that tenants will do, and I'm not trying to scare all of you, but tenants will try to say a reason why they couldn't show up to their landlord and tenant board hearing. It gets an adjournment, they can have a review, and now you're back waiting for another hearing date. We want to be able to offer more telephone hearings. This way, for people who are not able to meet there, or they have to get their legal representation to be there, but are tenants who have social anxiety, they don't want to show up to the landlord and tenant board. But most of these non-payment of rents applications at the landlord and tenant board, the tenants don't show. So we need to have something speed up the process. And legal aid funding. We need to allow for a tenant to still have access to their legal aid. It's only fair, but based on their income. They offer it out at the landlord and tenant board like it's candy. Anybody wants legal aid, it's free, you can go. Landlord, no, not you. Tenant, yeah, you can go ahead. Sorry, sir. That is what's happening, and that's what's our big time of wait time that landlords are waiting at the landlord and tenant board, because now the tenants are taking off and they're going to get legal aid, and then they get advice from legal aid. Now they're back in front of the adjudicator asking for an adjournment. Now we want to say that landlords, we're paying $190 to take your tenant to court for non-payment of rent. Now this has just increased. The Social Justice Tribunal just gave themselves a 6% increase, and now landlords are paying approximately $200 to take their tenant to the landlord and tenant board, and the tenants are now paying $53. Again, why are landlords paying one price and the tenants paying another? Not all landlords are rich and not all tenants are poor. And when we want to appreciate the forms that they have online for us, we need more of them. And we need to reduce the cost of adjudicators that we had, and the savings that we're going to be saving through speeding up this process. Those funds can be allocated into this rent paying to keep people in their homes instead of taxpayers paying for them being in the system. And again, the 198 adjudicators, their salary is at $17.5 million in salaries. Now, how many units can $17.5 million make at a $70,000 per unit? By dealing with a homeowner who may not be a landlord, but you can teach you to be a landlord. I'm going to give you some money, we're going to teach you, and you just provided a unit, and I also just gave you an income to help offset your retirement cost. Now again, with everything being lost on the landlords and everything being tilted towards protecting the tenants, landlords are losing $291 million a year based on this type of system that landlords are currently working with. That's a lot of money that could be in your pocket, a lot of money being put into the real estate industry, and a lot of units being created for tenants. So the Residential and Tenancy Act, there's no payment for late fee. There's no criminal charges left onto, a tenant can come in and damage it. I can go in and I can punch a hole in your wall as a guest, and I can get charged. But now because I came your tenant, I'm sorry, it's a landlord and tenant board issue. Okay. Rent increases do not consider the type of unit. We're guided by the 2.2%. We have to take into consideration, we have rental units that are plus utilities are included, and we have condos. Everything is going up. Your water and your sewage, your taxes, your insurance, everything is constantly going up. Now, why should your bill go up and your lost profits go down and the tenants are not being able to help out and pay for that portion of it? So that's where we want to say that if your utilities went up, if your property taxes went up, there should be a different formula in which that is what your rent increase, instead of trying to cap people at 2.5% or try to give everyone the ooey gooey feeling that as you create a secondary suite, it's now not under the rental rate and the cap. You can raise it to whatever you want. Again, it's going to be just like that 1991 loophole that was closed by the Kathleen Wynne. They call it the loophole, but you know what? That was very damaging. You probably don't see a lot of people building condos now because of it. The landlord forms are not enough to deal with the issues. There's a lot of gray areas. You don't know which form is what. You need a degree in psychology just to even look at these type of forms. We want to help the government create those units, those paperwork to be very simple and black and white, because once you have a black and white system, education on both parties, we can run a sustainable system. But again, the government's starting to see, they want to start allowing us to get a private bailiffs going on. We really wanted to try to see that through, just to give us the option of hiring a private bailiffs versus waiting on the government one. Because right now in just the Waterloo region is about 3 weeks, and up in Thunder Bay it's 5 to 6. And they don't do anything. They just watch you change the lock. Thanks, buddy. $340 later. And then when we rent increase, everyone wants to be very careful on when they're renting to people, because you can have a lovely couple and you guys are coming in, and guess what? You just got your mother, your brother, their sister, their aunt, your uncle, and they're all moving in, but guess what? You are all-inclusive. All-inclusive. Yay, landlord. No, they're inviting their neighbors over to do their laundry. This is the part where we need to protect our investors. And there's many other reports, and in the report that we have many issues stated and a lot of solutions that we really want to see at a provincial level. And again, we're going to need to see support from all of the landlords in the community, property managers, and real estate agents. But right now, for the late fee of the solution, there's no late fee. In all of the ways that you have right now in our society, you have a credit check, or you have your credit card, your insurance, you're late on your water bill, you get a late fee. In the landlord world, we can only provide incentives. We can't put the late fee in there. In Manitoba, Alberta, and even Newfoundland, there is a fee because you're being late on your rent. If a tenant doesn't have damages, we don't want to be showing on fair to our tenants, because we can't be affording to give them a damage deposit, first and last month's rent, the transferring of utilities, the moving costs. Well, that's fine. But if landlords could actually charge their tenants to be criminally charged for the type of, not the wear and tear, the willful damage that these tenants cause, it could actually let more investors want to invest into this industry. But right now we have too many landlords or investors running in the opposite direction because of the way the RTA and the LTB is. Rent increase for renos. You'll see it in the news a lot lately. Rent evictions is what they're calling them. The Toronto actually starts a fund, taxpayer fund, to help tenants avoid rent evictions. Well, if you as a landlord can get the renovations done based on it's being needed, there's a policy that we want to kind of go through to get the renovation started. But in order to do that, they need to be able to take that renovation cost, and you need to work it into offering it back to the tenant at a fair rate to include those type of costs that was put onto the landlord. Again, we got cannabis, we got everything. They're growing. You should see how many pot plants are in the rental industry now. No one ever smoked it. Now it's like all over the place. So again, we want to be able to touch base on a lot of these issues and the solutions. And I know we're very strict for time, and I'm going to give the last 5 to another executive member of what we're doing. So I want to be able to let you guys knowing how we're growing. But I'll touch base on the municipal policies of the water billing, the landlord licensing, property standards, building requirements and permits, and we also have the rezoning. So you have the solutions. We have the tenants being responsible for their own water bill. Landlord and tenant board and the property standards, they need to work together to deal with some type of maintenance issues instead of reinventing the wheel of landlord licensing, because it doesn't work. And instead, it causes the landlord to be able to raise the rent above the guidelines to cover that type of rent increase. And we need to make these permits affordable with less restrictions. It needs to be more investor friendly if you want us to continue, because we have to start utilizing what we have now inside of the units than having us look at, a lot of the elected officials want to just look at developers. Okay, what can you develop? What can we give you? You want free land? We have to start utilizing what we have, and we don't really need to keep building more in. You have to start utilizing what it is, and those secondary suites and those extensions without expansions on your current rental units, that could really be a very strong force of creating supply. And we go back to, is it affordable housing issue, or is it a supply and demand issue? Now I'm going to give you over to, oh man, I get tired of this stuff. I did it a few times, but I still got the baby brain, so I'm like, where was I? But I want to thank you all for being here today, to be not only being a part of trying to grow your portfolio, to bring rental units into the city, but I think it's very important to know how you can get involved and how you can advocate and end up working beside our movement of what we're doing, because it's very grassroots, and we want to make sure that you guys are a part of it and we get your solutions to being with us as we keep trying to advocate. But again, I always tell Elizabeth, I said, it's going to be one thing me traveling to these elected officials or emailing in elected officials and saying, I'm one lone wolf speaking for all of my pack. Or is it better to have the whole pack going after the elected officials, giving them the issues, but most importantly, giving them the solution? I don't know if I could take this off.
Just have a seat.
Up here? Oh, I always wanted to sit in one of these.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you? Oh, perfect. It's on. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here. My name is Elizabeth Kelly, and I am a landlord in Kirkland Lake. Anybody heard of Kirkland Lake before? Okay, not bad, not bad. So I have the distinct pleasure to be here as a friend and working with Kayla. She has done a phenomenal job. The changes, the awareness that Kayla has brought in the last however many years, like, we owe you a huge debt of gratitude. Thank you. So I'm here because I want to ask for your support. Anybody here currently a landlord of residential units? Hands? Okay, perfect. We are poised right now with a tremendous opportunity. We have a couple of months now, we have a window where we can seriously make a difference in the Residential Tenancy Act. Through the advocacy efforts of people like Kayla, the Ontario Ombudsman is now listening to us. There is such a housing crisis now that government officials are in a position where we have to be listened to. And the reality is, there's some great tenant organizations out there who are doing a lot of work in terms of advocacy. Who else is advocating for landlords? You look at the headlines in the newspaper and landlords are bad. We are bad, bad people. I don't want to be that person. That's not who I am. That's not the way that I run my business. But you know, I got to tell you, I was up until 1 o'clock this morning because I had a tenant who left for 28 days working in Nunavut and left every single window in his apartment open.